I want to thank everybody for attending this event on hot topics in platform tech, focusing on platform competition. I'm Danny Sokol at the University of Florida, and I'll give you a rundown of how we're going to manage the event. It's the first of its kind. So let me start by asking the question and then answering it. Why are we here? So the basis of this actually comes from a presentation I did last year, roughly this time, with Karim Lakhani, where we were thinking about the intersection of antitrust and privacy, and it led to a series of conversations over the next half year of, wow, we need to get all the stakeholders together in a room, largely because there are all kinds of missing assumptions that people have. They understand bits and pieces, but not in any kind of integrated way. So we wanted to try to add value. And it also turns out we wanted to break down disciplinary barriers. So a lot of the competition work is done by lawyers and economists. We might say that's a duopoly. And part of the reason we wanted to organize something was to actually say, you know, other fields have been studying issues involving platforms for a long, long time. A lot of important theoretical insights, a lot of important empirical insights, and these have been missing from the discussion. So one thought was to have refining and reassessment of some of our assumptions, and the best way to do that is to get people together. And so we have a number of people who have had very senior positions in agencies from around the world to offer their perspectives. And I wanted to get together a series of articles editors from some of the leading journals. And frankly, since we seem to be out of Avenger movies, I thought I would constitute my own set of Avengers together, each with their own special powers and insights that would help us to have a better understanding. So for those of you PhD students and professors wondering, you know, why it is that there's been a duopoly in broader antitrust, if you're a marketing professor, think about this. You're actually not reaching the intent, at least one intended audience. And so there's been a shortcoming there. If you're a strategy / management professor, there's this whole world of non-market strategy that I think has been underplayed, because we're seeing changes around the world, and we'll get to that in the discussion sessions, where frankly the very nature of the assumptions you make of how businesses operate are fundamentally changing, or at least potentially at risk for being changed. And if you're an IS professor, it's all, you know, so much of it is based on the economics of information. But I'll leave you with this Zen-like thought. You know, what if you have important papers focusing on platforms, and say the tree falls, but no one hears it because people in Brussels and Washington or Tokyo or other places, they're just not paying attention to these kinds of trees. And so with that, I want to introduce my colleague at the University of Florida, Mark Jameson, who heads our Digital Markets Initiative, to introduce our keynote, U.S. Federal Trade Commission Commissioner Christine Wilson.
All right, well, thank you so much, Danny. Appreciate all of that. And welcome everyone to this event. It is indeed Danny's brainchild, and I'm really excited to be able to be part of it. Our work in the Digital Markets Initiative is to try and accomplish some of the things that Danny just talked about. And that is, we want to understand as best we can the business side, the consumer side, all of that, of how digital markets work, and then fold into that, what does that mean for government policy? In this case, it's antitrust policy. The DMI is actually housed in our Public Utility Research Center for administrative purposes. Reason being that the business college, once we found out that we were going to do DMI, didn't want to create a new center. So they said, okay, where can we put this? I already headed PERC, and they said, all right, just head both organizations and we'll put it administratively under PERC. So that's why when you see our emblems and such in different places, you'll see DMI, but you'll also see Public Utility Research Center there. So let me go ahead and introduce our keynote speaker. And it's exciting to be able to do that. Almost all of you probably already know Christine Wilson. She is a commissioner at the Federal Trade Commission here in the U.S. She has been in that role for just about 2 years now. Her role is formally to expire in 2025. She's previously served as a staff member for a chairman of the Federal Trade Commission, and was once a law clerk in its Bureau of Competition. During her career, she's worked in several law firms, has worked in several companies. So she's done both in-house counsel and outside counsel as well. So we're really honored to have her speak to us. She got her law degree at Georgetown University Law Center, and also got her degree from the University of Florida, where she worked with Roger Blair, whom a lot of you know as well. So let me just go ahead and turn things over to Christine. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Good morning. I am delighted to provide just some brief thoughts to kick off this discussion of hot topics in platform competition. Thanks so much to the University of Florida, as Mark mentioned, my undergraduate alma mater, and to Danny Sokol and to Mark for inviting me to participate. First, allow me to offer the standard disclaimer. The views I express today are my own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the FTC or any other commissioner. While at the FTC, I've spent a lot of time thinking about big tech and platforms. Like many of you, I've participated in countless programs on this topic. The FTC's hearings on competition and consumer protection in the 21st century addressed it, as have congressional hearings. And this dialogue is global. Conversations with my counterparts abroad, like Commissioner Ryoki Aoki of the JFTC, who's with us today, inevitably turn to this topic. And this subject is worthy of debate and analysis. Platforms play a key role in many aspects of our lives, particularly during the COVID pandemic, when big segments of our professional and personal lives have moved online. Establishing sound enforcement approaches with respect to platforms is vital to preserving the benefits of competition and incentives to innovate. But we cannot formulate sound enforcement policy in a vacuum. And that is why today's program is both important and different from others that we've all attended on this topic. The goal of today's program is to expand our horizons. As antitrust practitioners, there are topics relevant to platform competition that we know, like network effects and multi-sided markets. There are topics we know about, but may not fully understand, like quantum computing and artificial intelligence. And there are topics of which we're not even aware, even though they might be relevant to our analysis of platform competition. I can't give you examples because by definition, this category covers things that we don't know that we don't know. An intentional decision to broaden our horizons can be highly instructive, but simultaneously painful. So by way of example, I'll describe a Christmas present my husband gave me several years ago. 2 spots in a week-long class on survival skills and primitive living in the Utah wilderness. The packing list was short: 1 change of clothes, a knife, a wool blanket, a canteen, and water purifying tablets. No tent, no phone, no flashlight, no matches. So while the days were sweltering, the nights were near freezing. We built shelters out of fallen tree limbs and created bedding from pine needles. I learned how to start a fire without matches, how to trap small animals, and how to skin what we trapped. So for the record, yes, I skinned a chipmunk. Yes, my husband ate it. And yes, it reportedly tasted like chicken. Friends and colleagues questioned our sanity in pursuing this adventure. I explained my rationale as follows. Civilization is built on the division of labor, which allows us to focus on our comparative advantages. For a society, the division of labor is efficient, but for individuals, the division of labor requires us to specialize. I was equipped to practice antitrust law and, frankly, to do little else. I wanted to understand more about how to provide my own shelter, hydration, food, clothing, and tools. In other words, I wanted to expand my horizons, and boy, did I. In a slightly less colorful way, that is our task today. Danny wants us to step outside our silos and broaden our horizons professionally. Thankfully, he's not asking us to trap and skin small animals, but we will be asked to consider what other bodies of learning are relevant to our roles as antitrust enforcers, policymakers, and counselors. During my career, I learned from a man who epitomizes this mindset. For years, I practiced with Tim Muris in both the public and private sector. Many of you know Tim as a pillar of the antitrust bar, but he also served at the Office of Management and Budget and worked on many presidential campaigns and transitions. He thinks more holistically about what we do than anyone else I know. He looks at antitrust through a lens of business and politics, as well as law and industrial organization economics. This wide-angle lens allows him to connect seemingly unrelated dots and predict trends and outcomes better than any other practitioner that I know. Tim's holistic approach was a natural fit with the FTC, which has a mandate from Congress to pursue a path of continuing education. Section 6B of the FTC Act empowers the agency to require an entity to file reports or answers in writing about its organization, management, and practices. So the FTC can conduct wide-ranging studies that don't have a specific law enforcement purpose. As we announced in February, we're using the 6B tool to examine acquisitions by large tech firms that were not reportable under the nation's pre-merger notification laws. The FTC will use this information to evaluate trends in tech acquisitions and make policy adjustments accordingly. In my statement supporting the study, I encouraged the Commission to consider similar studies across other industries, including healthcare. I also called on the Commission to engage in 6B studies of the practices of tech companies, including social media platforms, their algorithms, content curation, targeted advertising, and data collection, use, sharing, and monetization. The Commission has long used workshops and other events to bring the wisdom of people outside the FTC into the agency. I mentioned the FTC's recent hearings, but our initiatives to gather information are perpetual. Those of you who practice before the agency are familiar with its workshops, industry and issue studies, and reports. It's one of the aspects of the FTC that makes it unique and one that I find most impressive. But for those of you less familiar with the agency, please note that our Bureau of Economics has an academic seminar series and an annual microeconomics conference. I welcome you to submit papers and become more engaged with the antitrust community. Having been mentored by Tim Muris for so long, I am perhaps more keen than the average bear to understand what other areas of study have to say about what we're doing. Few of us connect the dots across disciplines as well as Tim, but it's important to try. For example, a forthcoming article on vertical mergers that I co-authored with Danny, Professor Roger Blair, and two of my advisors at the FTC draws from other bodies of literature to gain insights about rationales for vertical mergers. We cite scholars published in business management journals who focus on supply chains. They say transaction cost economics is, quote, one of the most cited and applied organization theories in operations and supply chain management research, close quote. But it doesn't seem to receive that level of attention among most antitrust specialists. Our article identifies 8 important lessons for vertical merger analysis that can be gleaned from the business management literature. Time is short, so I commend to you the full article in a forthcoming issue of the George Mason Law Review. The important point is that these insights are coming from outside what's traditionally considered the antitrust community. By thinking holistically, we can more accurately analyze both the benefits and costs of vertical mergers. The vital role that the FTC's own economists play in the agency's law enforcement function prevents them from spending all of their time on research. And we mostly hire IO specialists, so other relevant bodies of research might fall outside our economists' typical areas of study. Recognizing the need for additional perspectives, the new Technology Enforcement Division has hired technologists. Filling in research gaps is especially crucial in an area like platform policy, as policymakers, advocates, and enforcers analyze everything from what constitutes a platform to who benefits from them. The global debate about platform competition is too important to address while wearing blinders that limit the range of information we can see. Indeed, the importance of this topic increases our need for information about the costs and benefits to consumers and firms of advertising, how pricing works across various sides of a platform,
Thank you.
The role of and strategies for complementers in a platform ecosystem, self-preferencing on the platform governance in terms of interconnection and portability, platform design in B2B platforms, artificial intelligence and platform strategy, the role of IP in platform ecosystems, the interface of competition and digital privacy, and a host of other issues. I'm certain that other ideas for research will be generated by today's panel and the breakout sessions. Practitioners can learn what the academics are working on that might be useful to their practice, and the academics can find out what knowledge gaps exist in the antitrust community and seek to fill those gaps. Even conduct that is well established as per se illegal, like price fixing and market allocation, can be more effectively addressed with a better understanding of how technology might facilitate it. And even where a topic is not original or unique, research is still valuable. Online platforms are new enough, even when the underlying business is well established, that even basic questions deserve continued exploration. As I close, I'll offer one final thought about my experience in the Utah wilderness. When I returned to the office and civilization, many people were curious about my horizon broadening experience. I replied, not entirely joking, that perhaps I didn't need my horizons expanded quite so much. But years later, I reflect on that week with pride. Through the challenges and deprivation, I discovered deep reserves of resourcefulness and resilience within myself. It is my hope that today's session will similarly prompt us to take up challenges that will expand our horizons and years from now, leave us better informed and glad that we embarked on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine, for those wonderful framing thoughts. We're now going to move to our small panel discussion. That'll be 20 minutes, and then we'll magically get transported to small breakout sessions. We'll have 2 of them, and each of you will be magically transported after some 30 minutes from one breakout session to another, but in the meantime, you'll be transported back to the mothership where we'll give some overall summaries of what we heard and discussed in our sections, and we'll move around so that therefore we'll get a lot of value add, and we're purposely creating the small session so that people from the same institution will hopefully not be all in the same small session, and so we'll also have people from different departments and people at different levels of their career, from PhD student all the way to almost emeritus. With that, I'm going to just introduce my co-panelists for this session. I have Anindo Ghosh from NYU, myself,